Senior scientists worldwide are concerned that major portion of the global population are not familiar with biology and the actual implication of global warming and climate change in affecting the quality of human health and average life expectancy of the global population. Scientists who commented and supported Barack Obama's green economy during the Oxford University's Forum on Leading Change and Action on Climate Change in 2014. One of the things that I find most fascinating about Hutchinson's legacy is that he and his students studied systems like Lindsley Pond and the lakes around Connecticut for decades. Many of those papers are forgotten at this point. Many of the early empirical papers were important but not profound, yet they served as the inspiration for Hutchinson's truly remarkable work. So his synthetic work, the work that we still remember today's papers, like the paradox of the plank, that came out of his deep understanding of these empirical systems, whether his work Lakes and Paul of these relaxing Connecticut where the crickets, water bugs, you name it, he was interested in that, and that informed him in a way that allowed his true gift of synthesis to emerge. Another great example that Hutchinson doesn't get enough credit for is the idea that systems don't achieve some happy balance. This idea of balance of nature may be misplaced, and that in fact these systems are non-equilibrium inherently. He has a wonderful paper from 1961 called The Paradox of the Plant, and that was really based on his observations at Lindsley Pond, showing that these ponds never settle down and one species doesn't just conquer the rest in the plankton and sit there. They're constantly chasing seasonal change, and Hutchinson used his observations over many years to reach the conclusion that there is no single equilibrium point at which one species can dominate. He is best remembered for his ideas about equilibrium concepts in ecology, including niche. There is the basic niche there, but in fact he himself moved on from those ideas, and those ideas remain the foundation of much of modern ecology. The idea that there is a lack of equilibrium, that change is not only typical but may be fundamental to these systems, is a dominant paradigm today that really, if you trace it back, owes much to what Options End was doing. One of Hutchinson's great gifts was that the he had interest that ranged from evolution to ecosystem ecology, and he gave rise to those fields, but he saw them as the integrated part, and therefore he understood things like a cultural eutrophication, pollution of a lake's aquatic system, 5-phosphorus, and he's understood the impacts of those would have a very broad sense, not in a very narrow sense that many scholars have worked on it on, but he understood it could drive pollution, it could drive communities, you can drive ecosystems. He understood that climate could have these multifaceted impacts on ecosystems. One things that I love about that perspective that Hutchinson brings is that it's still valid today, was valid in the 50s and 60s when he was doing work that created the very origin of a lot of fields in ecology and evolutionary biology, but it's still equally valid today as we start to wrap those fields back around on themselves, and really that's the only way we're going to address the ecological evolutionary effects of climate change, is to look at the facts of climate, on nutrient cycling, on community organization, on evolution. All of those will play out at the same time. Hutchinson's skill at that, bringing that together, was really important. 6th anniversary of the 2010 BP oil spill. The extent of damage inflicted on the Gulf of Mexico marine life continues to unfold. A new study led by a researcher from the University of Illinois College of Veterinary Medicine has found that hundreds of baby dolphin deaths can likely be tied to the event. This study looked at baby dolphins that were stranded in Louisiana, Mississippi and Alabama from 2010 to 2013. It compared them to those in the baseline and reference populations. The study found that there were higher numbers of baby dolphin strandings compared to state-specific baseline stranding data January through April 2000 to 2005. And that the prevalence of stillborn dolphins among all stranded dolphins was significantly higher during 2011 in Mississippi and Alabama and in 2012 in Alabama. This journal is among the victims of the Gulf oil spill. It is one of more than 300 turtles that the Oceanic Conservation Organization says has been found dead or injured since the spill began April 20. John Hewitt of the Audubon Aquarium of the Americas in New Orleans says his group has been able to clean and recover only 16 turtles. Life's hard out there for sea turtles nearly, and it's getting harder by the day. 5 species of sea turtles nest and spend part of their lives in the Gulf of Mexico. 3 of them are either threatened or endangered. Hewitt says bottlenose dolphins are also among the casualties. His aquarium is treating 10 of them, and he says he is also concerned about a large colony of manatees off Florida's Gulf Coast. Birds are dying in large numbers. Several islands in the Gulf service wildlife refuges for some 3,400 birds. Veterinarian Joe Smith with the Fort Wayne Children's Zoo says conditions can get a lot worse. Louisiana's coastal wetlands service habitat estimated 1.8 million migratory waterfowl. Smith says migrating species use the islands as rest stops in the spring and fall. He says rescue workers have treated more than 1,000 birds, and each bird takes about an hour to clean. More than half have died. This recently removed from the endangered species list of nearly half of the brown pelicans in the southeastern U.S. test on the Baby Barrier Islands in the Gulf. Smith told reporters recently in Washington that many animals will never fully recover and will be relocated in zoos throughout the country. Long-term consequences of whirling include immunosuppression, which predisposes these birds to secondary infections and diseases. Long-term survivability studies are often lacking, and the effects on future reproduction are relatively unknown. The oil also threatens Louisiana's marshes, home to hundreds of species, nutrients and small organisms that feed fisheries and larger animals. Traces of the old in the barrels of oil continue to spill daily. Great extensions of deep-sea corals rests in silence. Some are 4,000 years old. Nobody knows yet what will happen to them in the worst environmental disaster in the U.S. for producers. Leave up unless you. Elizabeth Levo News. Half the people in the U.S. who eat fish daily exceed the safe dosage of mercury. If you find yourself suffering from mercury poisoning, here's what you need to know to survive. Which actor on the hit TV show Entourage suffered from mercury poisoning in 2008? Was it A. Agent Granny, A. E. Kevin Connolly, or C. Jeremy Piven? Sweet mercury poisoning, also known as hydroorgiaria, is a type of metal poisoning and medical condition caused by exposure to mercury and its compounds. Fish consumption is by far the most common cause of mercury poisoning, although can also be caused by breathing contaminated air, being exposed to mercury vapor, dental restorations, and also from the improper disposal of mercury-containing objects like thermometers or fluorescent lamps. Mercury poisoning happens everywhere throughout the world, since an element found in marine life and is commonly used in everyday items. Exposure to mercury leads. Preliminary symptoms include skin discoloration, swelling, shedding appearing in the skin, and peripheral neuropathy such as itching, burning, and pain. It then affects your brain and central nervous system as well as the endocrine system, causing kidney malfunction. It then boosts the risk of heart disease, increases your susceptibility to infection, damages your immune system, stomach and intestinal cells. If you've been exposed to the metal, it's crucial to first identify and remove the source of mercury. Decontamination requires the removal of clothes, washing your skin with soap and water, and flushing your eyes with saline solution. Showing severe symptoms from ingestion should immediately seek medical help in order to undergo chelation therapy. Is considered the standard of care for the removal of any heavy metals from your body. So which actor on the hit TV show Entourage suffered from mercury poisoning in 2008? If you guessed C, you're right. Jeremy Piven, who plays the character Ryu, suffered from mercury poisoning in late 2008 due to what is believed to have been caused by his habit of consuming fish twice a day for the past 20 years. So would you rather suffer from mercury poisoning or be poisoned by a poison dart frog? Since instrumental measurements began in the 1880s, the past decade is officially the warmest on record. Previous research suggests that in the 1980s and 90s, warmer temperatures and higher levels of precipitation, factors associated with climate change, were generally good for plant growth. But it is possible we've had too much of a good thing. And updated analysis published this week in the journal Science indicates that as temperatures have continued to rise, the benefits to plant growth are now overwhelmed by the longer and more frequent drought. Scientists from the University of Montana investigated global net primary production of land plants using satellite data from the past 3 decades. An instrument on NASA's Terra satellite provides insight as to whether plants are actually benefiting from the changing climates. High-resolution data from the moderate-resolution imaging spectral radiometer on NOTIS indicate a net decrease in primary production from 2000 to 2009 as compared to the previous 2 decades. Primary production is a measure of plant and the first step in the carbon cycle. Carbon enters the atmosphere from a variety of sources including deforestation, fossil fuel burning and wildfires. Plants absorb carbon from the atmosphere and use it to grow. As they continue to grow, they pull down more carbon and slow the increasing concentrations of carbon dioxide in the air. It is important for scientists to monitor changes of primary production as changes in plant growth affect the balance of carbon between the atmosphere and terrestrial ecosystems. This visualization represents the amount of carbon that was removed from the atmosphere by plants during the warmest decade on record. An increase in primary production as indicated in green tells us the plants are removing carbon dioxide faster than they usually do, while the decrease in primary production in red means that carbon dioxide is being removed more slowly. Higher temperatures lead to longer growing seasons and increased amounts of water and sunlight in the northern hemisphere, causing a net increase in atmospheric primary production. But it was not enough to offset the decrease in carbon absorption in the southern hemisphere, leading to more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Africa, for instance, suffered a severe drought in 2005. Crops suffered major losses, and with less green vegetation to fix the carbon, there was more of it left in the atmosphere. The planet as a whole experienced net decrease in primary production over the past 10 years, but it was a modest decrease. This research reinforces the idea that climate variability is complex with increasing demands on our natural resources, a growing population and expansion of biofuel production. It is critical to monitor the large-scale changes of plant growth and how it affects carbon levels.
So today I'm going to talk about exactly what is a large carbon dioxide cycle. So carbon dioxide cycle is in the air, but by the activity they have actually very extensive heating systems, and they are also very good for soil health, and plus they are actually more resistant to environments such as drought. And this salt we actually have a biology team that's very well suited to this, to all those different aspects, to facilitate the carbon storage, which is doing well, is very rich expert in biochemical pathways. I'm root expert. The reason for this is it has actually 30 times more carbon storage capacity than the rest of the plant. This slide you see here, this Softera marina sequence, probably all seen on the beaches sometimes when it basically gets after like a stormy day. You see lots of it at the beach, and you see that this species occurs worldwide. And what this picture actually can show you, if you think about it, grow in the northern Pacific area, and if they can grow around Florida, right? There are seagrass varieties that actually can withstand. Important not just because they are seagrass, they sequester carbon dioxide, but they are actually the breeding ground for fish. And the question is, I think the time horizon by which we really have to do something about carbon dioxide. To me, that our greatest responsibility is to be good ancestors. I think that's